I know what you're going to say. Dr. Cho, these lectures are damn long. Yeah, I know. And I've thought about it, but part of the problem is my explanations of it are basically you can't do it in a couple minutes. And they say just skim through every slide or write notes. If I'm going to write notes, I might as well write a book. But anyway, I digress, and I'm making this video longer than it needs to be. Last time we talked about what do you do when you have a lot of variables or whatever. Well, first of all, let's go through an example. What do people want in a chewing gum? And so what I want to do is look at the attributes and levels. And so the attributes I'm going to go after are price. How much are they willing to pay price per ounce? How long is the gum? How hard or soft? And do you like a light gum or heavy gum? Now, the thing is, when you pick these variables, you want them to be orthogonal. And what I mean by orthogonal is you don't want one variable related to another. Why? Because then you don't have to look at the cross variances. The cross variances are what kill you. And an example is, what are two variables that have a cross variance? Brand and price. Meaning you pay more for brand. So brand is related to price, and so that's a problem. And so that's what you look for. Are variables related to each other? In this case, none of them are. Here's the other problem. Depending on, not only that, I've got 5 variables here. I got 3 different brands, and I've got, I left brands out. But what I have is 48 combinations. Well, that's just way too many to test for. So what I do is I think of combinations which are going to be of most interest to the customer and myself. So what I do is I bundle them. And so that's the third step. So I have like double bubble at a certain price, at a certain hardness, etc., etc. And so what I do is I come up with 8 choices, and those 8 choices are the ones that make the most sense. For example, I could find out nobody wants to buy and pay for an expensive gum that's hard, not sweet, very expensive, etc., etc. So you can throw out those cases that people are just going to hate. And so I have people rate it 1 to 5, 1 to 7, or 1 to 10. Now, why don't I have them rate it 1 to 100? Well, the reason why that doesn't work very well is what's the difference between 66 and 67? Yeah, there isn't any. And that's why when you pick these scales, you pick them with enough granularity that there's actually a big difference between one to the other. And then once I get all my data where I have customers rank how much they like each combination, then I can use regression. And that means I can just curve fit it. Part of the reason why all the variables aren't here is that if Wrigley and Pure are 0, then it means double bubble must be the brand that people choose. And the values of the coefficients are basically act like weights and tell me how much they're worth. How do I treat non-numerics? Just like DOE, just assign them a value. And what U means is utility, meaning how much do they like those set of features. And what the math will do is it will pull out how important something is. And the real value in that is that this is a way you hide price, that people are picking price based on that value. And so you also want to look at the F level from statistics. What F level means is that your result actually means something. It's not just something that randomly occurred. So it's not a coincidence, it's actually real. And T statistics are about, are my 2 variables related to each other? Like, supposing on a graph I see weight versus number of calories consumed. Well, there's going to be a relationship. And so a T statistic, the probability would come out to be very, very low. The probability is the probability that they're not related. Yeah, I know. It's screwy in statistics. I get confused at times too. There are other ways you can also do surveys. One approach is called adaptive conjoint analysis. And what that is that you keep bringing up only two variables, but you ask people to compare. And so what happens is the statistics will pull out what people prefer. For example, would you rather have an iPad with only 1 gig of RAM or an Asus with 2 gig of RAM? Well, what would that tell you? If more people pick the Asus, it means that brand means less to them and that they'd rather have performance. On the other hand, if people are picking the iPad, then it tells you they like the iPad better. That's a good way of doing it. Another way of doing it, of adaptive conjoint, means that you have two sets of questions. Like, for example, supposing I'm a realtor and I'm selling in houses in Arizona. Well, if somebody lives in Arizona and doesn't want a house, it's like, they're an irrelevant person to me, so I throw that data point out. On the other hand, if they say yes to both things, then I give them one set of questions. If they live in Arizona but don't want a house, then I give them a different set of questions just to find out about their attitudes on. And so you can see. Choice-based conjoint, if you remember, how do I get from a preference to a choice? What surveys are typically asking you is what your preference is. And so preference to choice is a probability. Or you could ask them a product that actually exists and tell them which of these products do you like the most. So here we have an example of credit cards. These are actually products that they offer. And so by picking one, you're making a choice. You're not stating a preference. And so self-explicated conjoint is you measure the attribute levels you're picking and to see desirability. For example, do I like 1 gig of RAM or do I like 16 gigs of RAM better? And when am I willing to trade off for that? Again, would I rather have 16 gigs of RAM with 2.8 gigahertz of processor speed, or would I rather have 3.2 gigahertz of processor speed with 8 gig of RAM? An example of this kind of conjoint is, as you can see, I have eggs and I have different levels. And so the variables I'm looking at, is it about taste, is it about free range, is it about organic, or is it about color? And so based on these groupings, I ask respondents the level of importance of these variables. And so I can figure out, based on these variables, like, is taste the biggest driving factor, is it free range eggs, and so on and so forth. And so I can get the data out from that. Hierarchical bias conjoint, it's used for large databases, and that's what you're doing conjoint to evaluate subgroups and the relationships. Am I ever going to quiz you or anything on it? No. But again, it's for your own reference that you know what it is. And so for startup companies, the things that you need to consider when you have new products is about manufacturing, regulatory, how am I going to promote this? What channels am I going to use? Am I going to use online or bricks and mortar type stores? And what kind of partnerships do I need to need? These are all factors that I need to think of when I develop my new products. So the crux of product development is quite simply this. Customers want everything and they don't want to have to pay for it. And this is why these things like conjoint are so important, so you could figure out what is it that you're really willing to pay for. Some of you may have stayed at the Courtyard Marriott hotels. That was actually a hotel designed by conjoint. One complaint about their hotels is that the desks are small. I complain about it. However, what they found out is that people are not going to pay extra for a desk. They will pay extra to have a pool. They will pay extra to basically have breakfast every morning, but not a desk. And the reason why is when they're on the road, they're typically taking meetings. They're typically not sitting at a desk most of the time, and so it isn't valued as much. So what do they want? What are they willing to pay for? And that's where design of experiments and conjoint are so powerful. So in summary, what your product is mostly about is what you can do as a company, what your customer preferences are, and what is the competition going to do. That primarily drives your product development. And so your product strategy has to align with what you can do as a company. And understanding the dynamics of your customer and how your product ages over time goes into your product development.